What happens when a husband walks out carrying evidence that could ruin you completely? How far can someone go when they decide to fight back? Not with anger, but with quiet, calculated law. My name is Isolde Mercer, and I used to believe I was too young to feel trapped in a life that felt smaller than I deserved. I told myself Caleb's steady routines were chains around my freedom, that his quiet loyalty was dullness instead of care. He worked long hours, paid every bill on time, planned everything like life was a checklist, and I convinced myself that made him weak. I joked about it to Jenna, my best friend, saying I had married a man made of calendars and budgets instead of fire. When Derek, a trainer from the gym, started sending me teasing messages, I didn't push him away. I told myself it was nothing serious, that Caleb would never even notice, that I deserved excitement after years of boredom. I let the comparisons slip out one night in front of friends, laughing that my ex measured up better than Caleb ever did. Everyone laughed except him. Caleb stood, left the table without a word, and the silence he carried with him felt heavier than any fight we had ever had before. At home the air felt thick, like everything waited to break. Caleb moved through rooms quietly, the way people do when they are thinking instead of speaking. Jenna told me he looked tired because marriage had drained him, and I believed her because it made me feel right. At dinner, I made another joke about my ex being more exciting, and friends laughed while Caleb only pushed his plate away. He didn't shout, didn't argue, just left the table with that same steady silence. Later that night, I saw him putting papers into a locked drawer. The next week, I stayed out late again, telling Caleb I had extra work even though I was at Jenna's place laughing about nothing important. Derek sent more messages, little comments that made me feel bold, like I was living a bigger life than the one waiting at home. Caleb asked why I was never around when the kids needed me, and I told him he worried too much, that he imagined problems where none existed. He didn't argue, just nodded slowly like someone watching a storm forming far away. Jenna said he looked scared to lose me, that I should ask for more freedom, maybe even more money, since he owed me for all my sacrifices. I started believing her, thinking Caleb was lucky I stayed at all when other men wanted me. At dinner one night, I compared him to Derek again, laughing about how exciting younger men were, and Caleb only sat there quietly, his face unreadable. When I left for Jenna's afterward, he stayed home with the kids, packing things in the study after they went to bed. I told myself he was finally cleaning his papers. I didn't know some of them had my name on them. Jenna organized a birthday dinner downtown, the kind where everyone drinks too much and laughs too loud, and I wanted Caleb there only because it looked better if he came. He arrived in his work clothes, looking tired but polite, sitting at the edge of the table like a guest instead of my husband. When someone teased me about marriage being boring, I joked that at least my ex had known how to keep things exciting, unlike Caleb, who planned his life like an accountant, with no imagination. Laughter spread around the table, and I felt powerful in that moment, like I was the center of the story, while Caleb was just background noise. He didn't say a word, didn't even finish his drink, only stood up when the cake arrived, and left without touching a single slice. People asked if he was upset, and I said he was sensitive, that he didn't know how to take a joke, making it sound like it was his fault he had no sense of fun. Later, walking home alone, I saw him through the cafe window across the street, sitting with someone in a suit, handing over a folder I hadn't seen before. After that night, Caleb spoke even less, moving through the house like someone carrying a secret he didn't want to drop. I told Jenna he was sulking because men hated losing control, and she laughed, saying maybe he finally understood what it felt like to be powerless. The next morning, I noticed his briefcase was fuller than usual, thick with papers that didn't look like work files. At dinner, I complained about bills and asked why our joint account looked smaller, and he only said expenses were higher this month, nothing to worry about. I told him he was terrible with money, that I should handle things instead, pretending I cared about the finances when I really just wanted more freedom. He didn't argue, just wrote something down in a notebook and left for the study again. I heard him on the phone later, speaking in a low voice I couldn't quite catch, the kind of tone people use with banks or lawyers. Jenna said I was imagining things, that Caleb wouldn't dare make real changes without me agreeing. I believed her until I found a letter on the counter addressed to him from a law office downtown, stamped confidential in red ink. The letter from the law office stayed on the counter all morning. its red stamp looking like a warning I didn't want to read.
Caleb came home early that day, calm as ever, carrying another folder filled with receipts, bank statements, and printed messages that looked far too organized to be random. I told him he was overreacting, that couples fought all the time, that nothing I said at the restaurant meant anything serious. He didn't answer, only handed me a packet from the court listing custody terms, temporary financial orders, and dates for hearings I hadn't known existed. Jenna said he was bluffing, that no man moved this fast without making mistakes. But Caleb didn't look like someone bluffing. He packed the children's things for the weekend, with his mother watching silently from the doorway, her face giving nothing away. My parents called, asking what was happening, because Caleb had spoken to them too, explaining everything with that same quiet voice he used with lawyers and judges. I told everyone he was being cruel, but no one defended me. When he left that evening with the children, the packet of legal papers stayed on the table like a weight I couldn't lift. The hearing came faster than I thought possible, each day closing around me while Caleb moved through the process like someone walking a straight, clear path. He arrived in a dark suit, quiet as always, carrying every folder, every receipt, every printed message in order. His lawyer spoke calmly about the children, about finances, about stability, using words like best interest and primary custody, while I sat there feeling the ground slipping. I told the judge Caleb was punishing me out of spite, that he was twisting everything to make himself look like the hero, but even as I spoke, I could hear how thin my words sounded compared to his stack of evidence. Jenna didn't come to support me. Derek never returned my calls. My parents said they wanted what was best for the children and stopped answering when I complained about fairness. Margaret sat behind Caleb, her hands folded, her face steady like she had expected this ending from the start. When the ruling came, it was read so simply, so clinically, that for a moment I didn't understand what it meant. Caleb was granted primary custody, control of the accounts until final division, and the right to keep the family home for stability. I was told visitation would be arranged once the children were settled. Caleb gathered the folders while the judge was still speaking, nodded politely to the court, and walked out without looking back. At the house that evening, he packed the children's clothes with quiet efficiency, loading the car while I stood in the doorway waiting for him to say something, anything at all. He didn't. The last thing I saw was the back of his car turning the corner, the children's heads in the rear window, the house growing silent as his taillights disappeared. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching.